Well, welcome to the December monthly market report. It's been quite a year. Hard to believe that we are here in December. We're going to talk about several things today. One, sort of what's happening with expired listings and foreclosures, give you an update on that, and then really where opportunity is going to be inside of expired listings here at the end of the year. And then a little bit of a peek into 2025 to say what's ahead. There's so much happening, so many, these forecasts being adjusted right now. We're going to give you the latest on everything that is coming up so that you can be the knowledge broker to the clients you serve. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. All right, Bill McBride said this. He said, with recent house price increases, some people are worried about a new housing bubble. But mortgage debt isn't a concern, and lending standards are much better now than the bubble. So let's talk about this for just a minute. Bill McBride, we've always followed him, does a great job with the Calculated Risk blog. But I think this topic of debt is going to come up more and more. The national debt, or the deficit, they would call it, is higher than ever before. Consumer debt is higher than ever before. And people sort of look at, housing and go, okay, how does that all sort of impact the future of the housing market, and get a little scared, honestly. And so if we kind of focus in on the housing piece of this, and this came up last month in the monthly market report, when we started to talk about, is the market going to crash? I use this slide right here, and it shows consumer debt and how it's at a record level in this country, almost $18 trillion in consumer debt. And that's everything from home equity lines to auto loans to credit cards to student loans. Oh, by the way, mortgages make up the big portion of that, and people start to get concerned, right? If you take that picture right here, excuse me, mortgage debt is almost $13 trillion in this country, and makes up about 75% of consumer debt. And people get worried. If you look at that line just right here, $13.1 trillion in mortgage debt. Well, here's what they miss in that thought, is that there's 35 trillion in equity in homes across this country. So very, very strong. And I think that strength is going to play out in a number of different ways in home ownership in the coming years, and already is playing out in a couple of different ways. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute with foreclosures. But no doubt there's a tremendous amount of equity in homes across the country, which is giving strength to the real estate market. And now, while national debt's out of control, consumer debt's higher than it's ever been before, there is strength in the housing market. And that's the point that I would be very comfortable with, as this topic comes up, or if people wonder about that, or even if you wonder about that in housing today. ICE Mortgage Monitor report said equity growth has begun to moderate along with broader home prices in recent months. But that's still the largest volume of equity we've seen on record, adjusted for seasonality. The average homeowner has $319,000 of equity in their home, of which $207,000 could be borrowed against while still maintaining a 20% equity position. So, the strength of the homeowner relative to equity is tremendous. The strength of the homeowner kind of below the surface stronger than it's ever been before. Rick Sharga said this: for a homeowner in the early stages of foreclosure, that equity is going to help them avoid foreclosure, either by leveraging the equity to pay down past due mortgage bills, or by selling their property in order to protect the equity they otherwise lose at the auction. So I mentioned we're going to dip our toe into what's going on with delinquencies and ultimately with foreclosures. The reason for that is, we see this tremendous amount of equity, and it's playing out inside of delinquency and foreclosure rates. If you take a look at this right here from the New York Fed, this is the percent of mortgages that are 90 plus days delinquent through the third quarter of this year. And you see right here below 1%, the tremendous rise up right here in the housing crisis. And we've steadily come down and stayed down over the last several years. Now, it was interesting. I had the chance to talk with a large servicer of mortgages in this country, and they generally are good in their portfolios when the default rate stays below 1%. They would say that's completely acceptable. That's healthy. You see, going back here in the early 2000s, bouncing around 1%, and not only being past due, but maybe could lead to a default or could lead to something like that. But the good news is, with a tremendous amount of equity, if someone were to go into foreclosure, they have the ability to put their home on the market, to pay a commission, and probably put a little bit of money in their pocket to get to the other side of the financial crisis they and their family are facing. Adam Data said this in October of 24, the U.S. housing market experienced a slight uptick in foreclosure activity, with 30,784 properties filing for foreclosure, marking a 4% increase from the previous month, but an 11% decrease year over year. This nuanced trend shows foreclosures remain relatively low despite monthly rises. We go back to this slide. This is delinquencies. Right here, they're talking about foreclosure activity. This is the look at activity right here through the third quarter. And we can see activity on foreclosures remains very, very low. Again, I'm going to say due to the strength of the homeowner, due to the strength of a well-qualified borrower. Coming out of the financial crisis, that is the one thing that was given to us as a gift. Didn't maybe feel like a gift along the way, but it became harder to qualify for a home loan. And these well-qualified borrowers that are intent on not misusing their equity have produced a very, very strong homeowner, in the sense of sort of the balance sheet, if you will, of a homeowner. And so while foreclosures spiked up in the housing crisis, they've come down and stayed down post-crisis. A lot of people worried that during COVID, right here, there was obviously forbearance and a moratorium on foreclosures, that once we came out of that, we'd be in serious problem. But certainly hasn't proven to be true because of all the things that we just talked about. So we'll continue to watch that. But as we wrap up the year, I think you can be strong in your position that, foreclosures, we're not going to see a wave of those and a flood of those coming back into the market. Those that are maybe on the sidelines saying, hey, I want to pick up a bunch of foreclosures, not going to happen. Are there people that are going to be foreclosed upon? Certainly that's a truth in our business. We don't wish it upon anyone. But the good news is most homeowners have equity in their homes and could sell and could do something that would allow them to then, sell the house if they did get in financial trouble going forward. I want to sort of shift gears and talk for just a minute about expired listings. I think this will be a bigger and bigger issue for folks coming up, for agents and for homeowners that have maybe had the dream of selling their home in the coming weeks. The number one day on the calendar that more listings expire than any other day is December 31st. And, I believe this year we will see more listings expire on December 31st than any other day. As a matter of fact, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to do a webinar with RedX and Curtis Finn. If you know Curtis and RedX, they do a phenomenal job on expired listings, FSBOs, all the things, the lists that agents buy. And they've got phenomenal data on what happens to a listing once it expires and what goes forward. So be on the lookout for that and register for that webinar. But the reason that I believe expired listings are going to be sort of a bigger thing this year than they've been in the last year or two is for a couple of reasons. I'll go into those right here. First, days on market has sort of steadily risen over the last couple of years. This is median days on market in October. You see 43, 50, 50, 58 from 21, 22, 23, and 24. We know, no doubt, across the country, properties are staying on the market longer due to a number of issues. The primary issue being the rise in mortgage rates and the lack of affordability across the country, where people have said, you know what, it's gotten too expensive for us to buy a home, and we're gonna need to pause our search. That's led to inventory rising. This is a look at active listings each October, going back to 21, 22, 23, and there's more available inventory on the market, which ultimately for somebody that's looking to buy a home is a good thing. We don't want to forget that. But if you take the days on market is rising, you take inventory is rising, and oh, by the way, the third component here, sales are down. This is a look at existing home sales going back to 2021. You see sort of this deceleration in the market. You see things slowing down. And matter of fact, kind of hovering around, existing home sales, high threes, low fours, low rate of purchase across the country. And all of this sort of adds up to this equation of days on market up, inventory up, sales down equals expired listings. And I think being prepared to have conversations either right now with a listing that's going to expire or next month with another listing is going to be key. That is going to be a big, big piece of business. One of the things that we'll do on the webinar is Curtis is going to break down just exactly what the opportunity is from a commission volume. And I'll tell you this, I saw it before, it's huge. It is huge across the country. Because if you think about an expired listing, the seller has four options. One, they can relist with their current agent. I'm telling you, if you're listening to this monthly market report right now, I would have that conversation sooner rather than later about what needs to happen with that listing. Maybe it's a price adjustment. Maybe it's something to do with the accessibility or the staging of the home. Whatever the case is, it's time to have an honest conversation, because if not, the listing is going to expire. Maybe somebody else picks up that listing. I don't know. Second, they can relist with a new agent, which happens, right? If you're approaching an expired listing, that's what they're going to be talking about. Here's how one of your listings, here's how I can get the home sold, right? And they have no shame in being able to have a direct conversation with them. Third, the individual or family could take the home off the market and just say, hey, we're out, right? We don't want to do it. And my coaching there would be to always bring them back to what caused you to want to sell the home to begin with. And ultimately, and I'm going to get into this in just a minute, in FSBOs, they could list the home for sale by owner. They can say, you know what, not going to use an agent, not going to go down that road. I'm just going to list it for sale on my own. I think I can sell it. I think I know what I'm doing. And we can have a conversation with them about that. But no doubt, if we look at the dynamics in the market, it leads to more expired listings. Understanding what the options are is going to be key. There are 3 steps, I believe, and we've got an e-guide built around this to winning an expired listing. And I think if you understand these, you will win more expired listings. First, you have to understand the seller's psychology, the rational, easy for me to say, the rationalization, the reaction formation, and the displacement. That's the rationalization is, hey, we didn't want to sell the home anyways. You know what? We kind of, this is fine. This is what was supposed to happen. The reaction formation is, as you go through that, sort of going, well, we're better off anyways, right? We're better off in not doing it. And displacement is maybe even looking at, you as the problem, right? Or being able to say, hey, if we would have done this or we would have done that, sort of hindsight's 2020 as we rationalize why this happened. Step 2, you have to understand the factors that could have prevented the home from selling. Maybe it's access, maybe it's some sort of staging or exterior issue, or maybe it's price. I believe price is going to be critically important with expired listings going into the first quarter of next year. Certainly mortgage rates are at a point that have slowed down the market. A lot of questions about that going forward, but I think price is going to be something that you're going to have to pay more attention to as we go through this. And 3, again, understanding what their 4 options are. So if I understand their psychology, I can sort of break down and have an honest conversation about what it could have prevented the home from selling. Then I can talk to them about which direction do you want to go. Again, I can't underscore this enough. Be on the lookout for this webinar with RedX so you have the information you need to go after these expired listings. But one of the things we talked about were FSBOs, and I think the FSBO information right now is very interesting relative to maybe even a conversation you're having with somebody who's thinking about selling their home. First of all, 90% of sellers sold with the assistance of a real estate agent, up from 89% last year, and only 6% were FSBO sales. The share of FSBO sellers was historically low. This is what this looks like from NAR, going all the way back to the 80s to last year. You see like everything kind of coming through here. Slowly, the percentage of FSBOs has gone down across the country. And I think this is something that We need to get out there and show the value that we bring to the transaction so that people sort of, think about that as they're thinking about, do we want to sell our home on our own? NAR also came up with, the fact that of 6% of the recent sales that were FSBOs, 4% of them knew the buyers, right? So they already had a buyer and they're like, we're just going to sell it on our own. For 38% of all FSBO sellers, the main reason to sell via FSBO was because they sold to a relative, friend, or a neighbor. So what you're seeing right here is people that sold already had some sort of relationship with who they were going to sell to, and they it was kind of a foregone conclusion of what they were going to do. Most important reasons for selling as a FSBO: again, sold it to a neighbor or relative, didn't want to pay a commission, right? That's certainly gotten a lot more airtime this year. Buyer contacted the seller directly, didn't want to deal with an agent. Seller has a license, and you see those right there. But there are definitely reasons that people FSBO. And I think some of these things lead to what becomes most difficult if you're going to sell by FSBO. 70% getting the price right. Remember, I said price is going to be critically important. 13% said selling within the length of time, understanding the paperwork, preparing the home, having enough time to devote to all aspects of it. There are very real issues if you're going to sell by FSBO. The reason I'm bringing all this up is I believe as we wrap up this year, expired listings, which will in some cases lead to FSBOs, but expired listings will become a bigger issue. Price will become a bigger issue. Foreclosure is not an issue. Not that the train's not coming. And so we need to let people know that. And that's a good thing for the real estate market overall as we wrap up 2024. But, as we wrap up 2024, let's maybe take some time and turn to look ahead to 2025. And I like this image right here because it gives us 23 and 24, sort of in the rear view purview right here, and 2025 ahead. And 2023 and 2024 have been tough, slower years in real estate comparatively to maybe 2020, 21, 22. Saw the rise in mortgage rates, that impacting affordability becoming a challenge for people. And right now where we sit, I want to say this, and I hope you hear it and can sort of internalize it. We are in sort of the dead of winter in real estate. We're in the dead of winter right now where projections are being updated, forecasts are being updated, and there's a lot of uncertainty, right? Coming out of the election last month, people are going, okay, what's ahead? What's going to be, sort of coming around the bend? And it's caused a lot of people to question what they think about next year. But my message to you is, who do you want to be in all of that? Who do you want to be? Be the one that's intent on saying, this is what I see going forward. Now, I'm going to give you the projections right now. And I'm also going to tell you what I think about those, although my opinion is not worth any more than anybody else on the monthly market report right now. But have an opinion about what you believe going forward. Rick Sharga said this: I don't expect to see a meaningful increase in the supply of existing homes for sale until mortgage rates are back down in the low 5% range. Gosh, that seems like a long ways away from Rick. I think the world of Rick and trust him. And I think what he's talking about here is you're not going to see this mass sort of display of folks bringing their home to market until we see much better mortgage rates. And I would agree with that, but I do think you'll see an improvement of inventory. I do think you will see people put their homes on the market despite maybe not being in as aggressive of a drop in rates as what we thought maybe a couple of months ago. What are forecasters projecting? Well, right here, these are our mortgage rate projections as of the 4th of December. You see this fourth quarter of this year through the fourth quarter of next year, Fannie, MBA, Wells Fargo, the average of all three, and has them by the end of next year getting down below 6.33%. Call that 6.25%. I think right now where we stand, if you want to see this in a graphic, this is what this looks graphically. So rise up in rates, sort of plateauing over the last year. A couple of things that I think, if we go back to this sort of scenario right here. My opinion is I think we might beat by the end of next year 6.33. Can we dip our toe in the fives? I certainly think that's possible. I think, again, some of this hysteria and projection and sort of, panic and paralyzation, probably the more accurate word, of what's ahead, I think that will die down, and I think we will see a better mortgage market. I do believe that. Do I think we'll see rates that'll blow the doors off? I don't think that. I think we will still be in a situation where sort of the 6%, maybe high fives, will become the new normal in real estate, in the financing rate to go out and obtain a home. And now, here's what this sort of portends: is there is a buying opportunity right now. A lot of people have said, "Hey, we'll wait." I mean, we talk post-election, people are going to wait, right? Post, mortgage rates and things sort of being questionable, we'll wait. And so being able to understand that, I think, is going to be key. Freddie Mac said this: lower mortgage rates are expected to boost the housing market, but the lift will be modest given continued tightness in the existing inventory and home buyers staying on the sidelines, expecting further rate declines. What do I think? I think we'll beat that projection by the end of the year next year. We'll have to wait and see. But no doubt, as we look out and look ahead in this market, we should be in a better interest rate, mortgage rate environment next year, which will mean good things for those buying homes. I believe it'll bring more business into the market. As well, we should see homes continue to rise in price, the rate of appreciation. This is a look at 16 forecasters that say, okay, what's going to happen in the U.S. housing market next year relative to price? The majority of these from here to here in the 3 to 4% range, 2.9 to 4.9. I'm going to call that 3 to 4%. The average of all of these, 3% right here, as you look across there. Very normal, very healthy price appreciation for residential real estate. Now, that's the national outlook. There will be markets that are outlier markets that may plateau or even see a decrease in pricing, no doubt about that. And maybe some markets that are hotter than this. But nationally, we see a very healthy real estate market. No, by the way, if we're honest with ourselves, that is a good thing. That is a good thing for anybody thinking about buying, selling, the strength of housing going forward. It's something that we all want to happen. The other thing that I clearly see from forecasters is the total home sales is forecasted to rise. The projected new home and existing home sales going into next year, about 5.1 million. Now, let me back up for a second here. This is new homes and existing homes, 5.1 million. Normally, when you hear home sales, they talk about existing home sales. We've added a new construction to this. The peak of the market was 2021 right here. And then we sort of come down over the last couple of years and we'll come back up. I think we'll look at 2024 as being the valley of home sales, as being the valley of transactions, and start to work our way out of it. I've mentioned this before in the election information that we produced as Keeping Current Matters. And, typically the first year of a 4-year election cycle is the best year for housing for an incoming president. I do believe we will continue to get better over the next 4 years in the number of transactions in this country of residential real estate. The other thing, Odetta Cushy said this, looking ahead to 2025, my baseline expectation is that single-family home construction is poised to steadily increase, bolstered by modest declines in financing costs for builders and buyers, and by the scarcity of existing homes due to the mortgage rate lock-in effect. So what do I see? I see mortgage rates as being in a better scenario. I see prices rising, but at a more normal rate. I see home sales forecasted to rise. That's a good thing. And builders are trying to build them as fast as they can. So I hope that gives you a look around the corner for 2025 as we wrap up this year. And always so grateful for everybody that listens to the monthly market report. As we wrap up here, I want to say one thing. Who do you want to be in all of this? Do you want to be the person that sort of falls prey to many of the forecasts and the dead of winter right now? Or do you want to be the one that says, this is my plan going forward? I was on a group call with some people that were KCM members. And this idea I want to put in your head, spending just an hour a week focused on how you're going to be the expert, how you're going to get things out on social, how you're going to get things out to your sphere of influence, how you're going to get things out to those that you're working with, I believe will have a dramatic impact on your business in the coming year. and staying connected to the monthly market report, staying connected to all the education that we give you as a KCM member, I know will be key to that. So as we wrap up 2024, my hope is that you have a wonderful wrap to this year and holiday season, wonderful new year, and can't wait to be back with you in January in 2025. Take care.